here earlier than usual as we're back with the Dana White Contender series. Different than your typical card as we have a bunch of prospects trying to prove themselves and get into the UFC with an impressive performance here. We have a couple guys that you've seen before on Dana White Contender series or in limited fashion elsewhere. And then you have some guys that you might not have heard of and are lower level relatively to hype of some of the other guys. Um, This is the first week of 10, so we'll be coming here on Tuesdays to watch these guys. And I think it's 5 fights a card. And we're looking to see the young talent. A lot of guys have come out of the Dana White Contender Series and been successful. So, nice place to find new talent. And without further ado, we'll get this fight started. We got Christopher Ewert taking on Yuri Panferov. You might be familiar with Ewert as we broke him down before. I believe it was UFC 317 he was supposed to be on. I think it was the Ewert Poirier card, and he weighed 10 pounds overweight in what was a short notice fight for him against Jackson McVeigh. Gets called off. He gets cut, and they make him build his way back up. But overall, um, he's a very durable striker. He's mostly a boxing style guy with decent takedown defense. But I think he honestly might be impossible to knock out on the feet as he's just trying to get out there and brawl. Like I said, in the pocket, he's very strong and he's throwing power. He's not trying to win these point victories. He's trying to put you in a casket. And then on the other side, you have a guy, a grappler for Panferov, the Russian polar bear, who fights out of the New England scene, not really like a your typical Dagestani. Like when I first heard an interview with him, I was a bit surprised by how American he sounded. But besides that, his game plan is clinch entries and early takedowns into like submission attack. That's where most of his victories come from. I think that Christopher Ewert is a bit bigger than him, and he might have the strength to stuff Panferov's takedowns, and the size and strength um, is going to nullify the grappling threat. In a brawl, Ewert's power is going to win the big moments, in my opinion, and he has the durability to stay there for 3 rounds. And I like Ewert to either take a decision in like what possibly should be a war. Some time might get burnt against the cages, but I think he might be able to find the chin of Yuri Panferov and get him out of there. I'm going to take Christopher Ewert here. Line's at around minus 180. If you take a look, they have over unders 1.5 at minus 180 for the over. I'm not quite sure how to play this for the over under. I'm probably just gonna lean Ewert since the odds are a bit juiced. Under 1.5 might be a value play at plus 150 though, if you don't want to pay juice and you want to take a shot. But remember, as I said, these guys are coming up in the ranks, so you don't want to hammer as if you're on a stacked card like we have this weekend. You want to take your shots. Hopefully, we have some method and stuff. So I think Ewert by knockout might be a value spot. Yuri Panferov, I don't think he's taking on guys with such a high level. Not saying Ewert is, but at LFA he's all right. So I think I'm gonna take Ewert here. We'll move on to the next bout. We have a really hyped up Australian prospect in George Mango's taking on Radley de Silva here in the 155-pound division, lightweight. And you have George Mangos. I think it's 155. It might be 145. But George Mangos, 21-year-old specialist of submissions from Australia, 7 hours a pro. Great at taking the back and transitions in the wrestling, and he has some solid striking to back it up. But overall, he's looking for submission victories. He has a flying triangle on his record. He's very smooth on the ground with his jiu-jitsu, and he has a 100% finishing rate over amateur and pro. So he's not finishing these fights on the cards. He's getting them out of there with submissions. And overall, on the other side, you have Radley de Silva, 30 years old, more of a seasoned veteran. Not a lot of fights on his resume. He's fighting in a regional scene in Canada. Fast, flashy striker. A lot of creative tools. If you watched any film of him, you've seen highlights of spinning kicks, front kicks, and all other like variants, high variance striking. His accuracy's alright because he's throwing a lot out there. And his grappling of his own compared to Mangos, he has some solid grappling. You haven't really seen him tested as much down there. But he could probably be taken down. That's where probably this fight lies. I'm still a bit tossed on this fight because Mangos is very young. Uh, Mangos is a legit sub threat, but he's still very green. Like I'm saying, I'm not sure he has the physicality to consistently get Silva to the ground and keep him there. And on the feet, Silva's explosiveness and pressure, like with those front kicks and all the crazy stuff, might be able to deal rounds and get pressure up there and make a good visual for the refs or for the judges. So it's possible Silva honestly makes this mistake and gives his back. I'm gonna slightly lean Silva. I think his striking. I think it might be a little bit too early for Mangos here. Usually, I'm gonna take the guy with the age difference, younger wise, but Silva's entering his prime. I think at 30 years old, 21 for George Mangos. Obviously, this is possible, but plus money for De Silva, which might end up being a pick of line at the end of the day. I think has some value on it. And if I'm looking at like the over unders, you get the over 1.5 at -205. It's a bit juice for my liking, but I do think it goes over 1.5. I think they might stay on the feet and wait and test each other's striking to start. Maybe some clinches against the cage. So I think round two to start, if that's available as a parlay piece, would be solid. And over 1.5, even though Mangos is a 100% finisher and Silva does have that knockout power. I think they might be timid of each other and might take their time to start the fight. Um, I could see Radley getting subbed if you throw in those spinning attacks, but I think as an older fighter, he might have that IQ not to put himself in harm's way, given his backup. We'll move we'll move on to the next bout. We got I think the biggest favorite on this card. We got Bysinger Susurkaev taking on Murtaza Talha. Um, and Talha is another guy that has already been on Dana White Contender Series. He fought at 205 previously. This one's at 185. But he fought Rodolfo Bellato, got knocked out, and now he's moving back down to 185 and getting this opportunity. After fighting, he fought at the Dana White Contender Series, and then went to the Belarusian Fight Championship and fought against an 0-4 opponent who Tapology flagged for questionable or illegitimate fights. So going from Dana White Contender Series and then fighting an illegitimate guy, and then coming up here to fight Bysinger Susurkaev, who is a legitimate uh, prospect, who I'll talk about in a second, does scare me. I do. I want to see how his strength carries down to 185 now that he's making that big cut. He's gonna be a big guy, and he's gonna try to grapple. That's gonna be his game plan. He's a strong grappler, and his hands are. He is all right boxing. Not like he's not one dimension. He's not completely one dimensional, but for the most part, he's just trying to clinch up and get you to the ground. He has submissions in his game. And on the other side, Tsitsukayev, undefeated prospect, Dagestani, fighting out of Chechnya. He trains with like Khamzat Chimaev and some of the stronger guys, and he's a big guy. If you look at pictures on Instagram of him with Hamzat training, the big guy in his own right. Obviously, Talha has the width advantage, but the very accurate striker who has like pinpoint shots, and he's more of like a content and laid back guy. He's walking down with his hands down, and he's methodical with it. He's pinpointing you, and he has the power to put you out. He hasn't faced insane competition, and he can be put in bad spots on the ground. I have seen him taken down by some questionable competition, so that's what scares me here. Paying a -310 price tag, where he's on 1 week's notice against Talha, who's going to most likely just try to pressure and grapple. So round one is going to be very interesting. Talha runs over and tries to get him down because looking at Chiserkayev, what gives me a little bit more of confidence is him training with high level grapplers and bigger guys like Hamzat Chimaev. Might have him ready, even on 1 week's notice, to stuff the takedowns and then absolutely dismantle Murtaza on the feet. Uh, I will say it sucks that he's on 1 week's notice because he did look not as 100% in shape as he would be with the camp. But I still think if he can get out of round one again, taken down, and he gets sweaty, and they start eating at the gas tank of Talha with this cut, I think he's gonna be able to pinpoint, find the strikes, and get out of there with either a decision win or a late finish. So I'm gonna end up siding with uh, Weisinger Susurkaev, but I really want to see some round props, like as maybe not round props, method props, uh, for this fight because I'm looking at the over unders, and you have over 2.5 at plus 185. I think there's some value on this fight going at least over 1.5 at what should be a respectable line when that drops. Susurkaev should be able to put the hands on him, but Talha might stall because he's gonna immediately go for takedowns. I might not take that over necessarily. I think there might be value on Susurkaev by knockout depending on when that drops. It was at plus money, but I wouldn't. I wish there was takedown props so you can attack that for Talha, but I doubt there's going to be. So I'm just gonna lean Susurkaev as my overall prediction. But that 1 week's notice is gonna scare me a little bit in terms of the grappling realm. And Tall's gonna go for it immediately, and coming down weight, he's still gonna be big. So keep that in mind if you're putting out some heavy parlays. I don't think the minus 310 is worth it on 1 week's notice. I think there's other realms when method props or other shit drops like round two to start or something like that. But we'll move on from that. And before we move on, as usual, this is brought to you by the Fade Factory MMA Gems, a free Discord community which is going to be in the description. Uh, Profitable card after profitable card. Didn't have our best card last week. This past one with a lot of weird fights in terms of wide lines and stuff. But we still ended up profiting. We had a lot of plus money snipes. Um, and parlays were hit, honestly. Hot Hand MMA, who's not here today, uh, hammered like a 5 unit hammer that smashed with relative ease. We were hitting a lot of pre fight snipes, but not as many victories as we've come accustomed to with clearing these cards out. But we'll take I think all three of our cappers went like 4 units plus profit, so individually. So that's always solid compared to some of these cappers out here. So with that being said, join for free. Link in the description, and we'll keep this pushing for the last fights. As we have Ty Miller taking on Jimmy Drago. So Ty Miller, younger guy at I believe 25 years old, 5-0 as a pro with only 5 fights. No, he had a no contest. He had a no contest too, I believe. But stalking pressure, style boxer with long jabs and crisp hands. Slightly undersized for the division in terms of skinniness. He is tall at like 6'2", 6'3". But I think his defensive wrestling leaves a lot to be desired, and that could be a point of emphasis for this fight. In his last fight, he was losing round one with the grappling before an eye poke no contest get that out of there. It was questionable with the strength, and you have Jimmy Drago, who's more of a striker, a creative striker at that, with a variety of weapons, with head kicks, unorthodox shots. He describes it himself as unorthodox kickboxing, as he has some wrestling too. I think he has below average striking defense and leaves his chin open a lot. He keeps good pace, but like as he's hittable. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight, and I've been back and forth on it. Miller is a bit softer in terms of the clinching and the body control that's going to be happening to 8 minutes. But I think on the feet, he does have a stylistic matchup in terms of the striking. I think Jimmy Drago is going to have to turn into a wrestler in this fight. If they stay at range, I think Ty Miller is going to be able to eat him up with counter strikes. Because I think stylistically, Jimmy Drago is a guy who's going to come after you with these strikes and throw barrage of punches. And Ty Miller is a nice, crisp counter striker with boxing background. And Ty Miller is going to be bringing forward pressure off the jump. So Jimmy Drago is going to be backing up and like on the back foot for the most of the time. So when he's throwing these flurries, I expect Ty Miller to be able to get the counter strikes and be able to land more important moments. But Jimmy Drago is not out of this fight if he can employ the grappling. You haven't seen it a lot in fights, and he's been on the bad end of grappling exchanges at times. But I think if he gets to the clinch and gets this fight to the ground, that's his best path to victory. That's there for him to possibly win a decision. I don't really see him knocking Ty Miller out. Ty Miller has impeccable defensive striking, the way that he moves, and that's why he's so good at stalking you because he's so defensively sound that he knows he can counter. So I don't think he's gonna get knocked out. So I like a possible over. Over hasn't dropped in this yet. I want to see what it is, but I like Ty Miller possibly to win this on by decision. Jimmy Drago is not out of it, and this might be a fight to live bet depending on how Jimmy Drago can control clinch situations against the cage. Because if he could do that and 8 minutes away with the grappling, Ty Miller did not look really solid with the with takedown defense. He does get up pretty fast, but we have to see how that is at the next level. We'll keep it pushing though, and we'll go to the main event, our last fight, according to DraftKings or Tapology. We have Ilian Bouafia versus Nemia Santana. So this should be a nice contested battle between two strikers for the most part. Um, and we'll start it off with Bouafia, 6'5" to southpaw counter striker, who works well down the middle, still very green, hasn't faced very strong competition, and he's been hurt before. Like he tends to get hit, and it like right where his equilibrium is. You've seen him hurt before. The way he throws those long lefts, he's susceptible to getting countered, very easily. So that's something to take a look for against Nemia Santana, who's gonna be trying to employ the pressure, looking for the knockout shot, and he has the power to do so. So Nemia Santana could definitely knock out Bouafia, but I think the lateral movement and the counter striking with the long reach of Bouafia is going to be a real problem for Santana. And in the grappling game, I think that Bouafia has a slight edge, even though you haven't really seen Santana tested on the ground as much. I have seen him not be able to take down some lackluster opponents, so I'm not quite sure he's gonna be able to take down Bouafia. And in the clinch, um, if Bouafia can not get clipped and get overzealous in those exchanges and get hit, I think that he might be able to get an easy point victory here. I don't really catch him as like a one punch knockout striker, even though he has a couple fast ones. I think that he's going to be able to outlast Santana. We're going to have a nice fight in our hands. Odds might get a little bit better live, but I think Bouafia by decision could be a solid route. And that's another fight that they don't have the over unders for, but that's gonna be my lean. 245 though for Bouafia is a bit wide, especially since he's shown some possible durability issues. So that is something to look for. I hate paying that much juice even on UFC fights with accomplished fighters, let alone with guys who, for the most part, are question marks. So uh, when you look at it that way, it's something to think about. Not to hammer on like this minus 310s or the minus 245s in these, and you can take a shot on some dogs. But overall, I think that a lot of favorites are gonna win on this card. I don't think I picked an underdog to win. Besides, I think I might have leaned to Silva, so he's a dog that has worthwhile value, even though Mangos is a very touted prospect out of Australia. But either way, uh, not much else to say without the more lines. We're gonna have stuff in gems and in the Discord, and we're gonna have our podcast for UFC 319 coming up. We're gonna have that a day early. We're gonna have it on Wednesday this week. We're going on vacation. Well, one of us, me. So getting it out a day early for you guys. So thanks for joining as usual. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can cash on a Tuesday. See you at the cash counter.